We got there in the end. He was late because he said he couldn't find the link. Then when he came into the studio, he made me go and change my T-shirt because, well, we'll talk about the T-shirt afterwards. Yeah, so anyway, welcome everybody to Wednesday night's program with absolutely zero prep tonight. So we're going to wing it from start to finish.
We have literally no idea what we're going to talk about, although we probably can work few things in and all of that sort of nonsense. But yeah, we're not. This is the least prepared we've been since this time last year when we started this nonsense.
Right, I've got to ask. I'm compelled to ask. Who is Arthur Braithwaite?
Arthur Braithwaite. I used to be in a band with some friends, and our lead singer went off and had a family, so we sort of stayed together and did a band, and we included Arthur Braithwaite. I can't remember the entire name of the band now, but it was something ridiculous, preposterous name that had Arthur Braithwaite in it. So I'm tipping my hat to my bandmates from a few years ago. Hello, boys, if you're ever watching this, and that's my nom de plume for tonight, and I'm very proud of it. So Arthur Braithwaite. So,
well, I'm not speaking to anybody in my band.
You're the only person in your band,
which makes it very difficult.
Yes,
let's just say when we break up due to musical differences, it's very awkward.
Yes, and you often have differences with yourself. So
I tell you what, I am at odds with myself at the moment because I have been in the workshop. I've been doing some bits and pieces on that Panzer IV, but painting it, I've just hit a wall. I can't. I know what I need to do, but I am just completely can't go forward with it at the moment, and it's utterly bizarre because how many models have I built, and it's just a complete mental block at the moment.
Maybe if I can put you onto the couch.
Yes, doctor, yes.
We'll sit over there. Maybe you're pushing a bit too hard with these projects. And the reason I say that, and I put this out to everybody else, so it's not just aimed at you. A lot of what you're doing at the moment is experimental within your own world, isn't it? You're trying new things, trying new projects, you're building kits that you haven't built before, you're building subjects you haven't built before, you're doing paint jobs that you haven't really done before. So you're kind of pushing to sort of develop your own bank of techniques, for want of a much better description. And maybe you're pushing a little bit too hard. Maybe when you get to this point, instead of trying to push it forward a little bit, it's to take a step back, know what you can do and how you can do that. And do it on this, and then see, once you've got that sort of bedrock of ideas and bedrock of sort of technique on this project, if anything develops from that, you know that you can kind of move it forward. Otherwise, I've done the same thing, and that's why I'm sort of speaking from experience rather than sort of joking around with you. In that I know that I've done certain things, but I want to develop that way, and so I've sort of worked it out in my own head. But when it comes to actually doing it in 3 dimensions, the ideas aren't manifesting themselves at the end of my fingers.
The bizarre thing is that I'm really not doing anything different. I really am not doing anything massively different. It's just Panzer Grey.
But you'd already set yourself up for a fall. Because on Sunday night, when you revealed the model and it's in its basic, you'd already said, this is Panzer Grey, and I find Panzer Grey really difficult. So
I know if this was olive drab,
exactly. So whether consciously or subconsciously, you've already suggested to yourself,
put a barrier up.
Yeah, that you can't do something. You can't do it. If perhaps subconsciously, if you'd said, you know what, this is going to run on rails. All I'm going to do is I'm going to do, and it would have been okay. But sometimes when you say this is going to be difficult, sometimes it can be difficult because you've already prepared yourself for that eventuality. But my advice, for what it's worth, to anybody that gets themselves into this position is try not to sort of push too hard against something, and just take a slight step back and just think, okay, what can I do?
Do you know what I might do?
Forward?
Do you know what I might do is I might actually chuck together another one of those little Zvezda 72nd scale click together armor kits, because there's a couple of Russian ones to do, and I can handle 4BO green, piece of cake. So what I might do is just blitz through them, and then I'll be away. It's just literally the physical kind of like action of picking up the airbrush and to start doing that first layer of kind of like weathering on it.
Yeah, we all go there. And it's sort of, I was a bit like that when I was painting the body shell on the car, the blue. It's essentially a blue body shell on a white car. I sort of procrastinated over that for a while. And then once I'd done it, it was just like I was away.
Yeah, but last year I built that Italeri Opel Blitz radio wagon, which was in overall grey. I had a great fun with that because I sprayed it grey and then went straight in there doing exactly what I'm going to be doing on this one. Yeah. But anyway,
inherently there's no difference though between olive drab and German grey. They are, essentially they're tonally identical. They're just a different colour. So anything that works on olive drab is instinctively going to work on German grey.
No,
the only thing that stops you thinking otherwise is yourself, because the techniques are transferable across those two colours. The only time they're not transferable is if you're doing something in desert yellow or something, or winter white. That's when it starts. But those two colours effectively should be the same. So
I would argue that there are certain kind of like techniques that you can do with one that don't transfer across to the other. That there are certain things that you can do with olive drab where you put down certain colours, certainly certain shades and things,
right,
which will complement and then work with the olive colour. Because grey tends to be, German grey tends to be just this kind of. It's hard to explain, but
no, I don't get it. I understand. I do understand what you mean, because I think we've all been in that position where there's a hurdle there in front of us and we can't quite work out why we can't hop over the top of it.
Anyway, welcome to In the Psychiatrist Chair, and which is actually a program on Radio 4. So we will have a quick rush through and say hello to everyone who's watching tonight. So we're going to say. We'll say hello to Artie Mod, John Patrick Huston, M. Paul Lloyd, Stuart Brenda, Peter Marshall, Mike Reeves, Pavel Krupovich, Ian Goldstraw, Andy Brennan, Steve Moores, Paul Milligan, Mark Ewan, Martin John Henry Smith, who's using up all the names on the planet, Greg Woodbridge, Dave Swindle, Tim Alexander Maunder. See, they're all putting their full names in now, for goodness sake. Dave Fleming, Yoafa Fretti, Stu Weller, Jerry Dorr, Colin Strachan, Anthony Bird, Peter Cosgrove, Matt Whiting. Good evening, Matt. Vincent Murphy, Dave Mummery, Stephen Pryor. Screens jumped again. Ian Rusco, Rob Monfee, Peter Marshall, Steve Moores, Dave Coward. And we're up to date. Anybody whose name I missed off, I'm afraid there's a name shortage because people are going mad with all their names now. They're just, or they're just putting false ones up on the screen. Like Arthur.
Who's doing that?
Who's doing that?
Shocking thing to do.
So let's talk about, we talked about my projects or lack of. How are you getting on with your Lancaster?
With my Lancaster, right. We've got Matt Whiting from Airfix watching this.
He designed it, so
this could be an interesting thing. Do you know? I can show you because it is behind me.
I'm taking notes here.
I have.
Oh, look at that!
I have a Lancaster with black undersides. So it's kind of on the way. I have to say, painting black onto a pale grey model when you've got lots of it, I started to feel like I was an outtake from the Fast Show by the time I'd finished painting.
Black. Oh, impressive! Coming in over the top of me. Yeah, I know.
It just felt like it's never ending. I mean, I've got these here. These are on the radiator currently. So black. black. Everything's black. It's just horrible.
Did you not get your little stencil texture mask out and kind of?
Not yet. It's still
all right.
black.
Okay. All right. All right, Johnny. All right, Johnny. Put it away, Johnny.
No. So yeah. So it's together. And I've sprayed the sort of the undersides and all the little details. I mean, one of the things about these early Bomber Command aircraft is essentially, other than the camouflage on top, they are black. You know, that whole thing. And to do this, I've used a mixture of paints for this one. I've used Tamiya's normal acrylic matte black for internal sections, insides of doors, and all that sort of stuff. And because I'm going to have to mask this tomorrow to do the upper surface, I've used the LP, whichever one it is, LP3, which is flat black, the lacquer black, which kind of goes on and builds up. So far so good. Overall, I like this kit. I'm slightly perturbed by the fact that I know it's a Lancaster and yet it kind of isn't, because of the radial engines. I'm slightly bugged out by the idea that probably the one and only Lancaster I'll ever build, and I've never built a Lancaster before, is going to be one that doesn't have Merlin engines. So it's not a it's got
proper engines from
It's
Bristol.
got those big old radial engines and all of that sort of stuff. But overall, I like the kit, and it captures the look of a Lancaster really well. I've got to mention the plastic, and I know I've spoken to Matt about this and everything. Plastic. If you talk to modelers, except when it isn't. And there were issues with this kit. There have been issues with me building this kit. Part of that is that I've got a very tight deadline. Started it Monday morning. I'm planning to get it finished by Friday night so that it can be shut off. I think because of issues that I've had late last night and early this morning, that deadline is going to be shifted by a day. So it probably won't be finished until Saturday night. And part of that is that the quality of the plastic has made it difficult to clean this model up. And that has been particularly apparent around the fuselage halves, which are warped and needed to be strapped together, and also around the nacelles at the top. There's basically, you've got the wing sections, and then you've got the sort of under part of the nacelle, and then you've got a plate that goes on the top, and the fit of that plate going onto the top of the nacelle was not great. The problem how that manifests itself is not necessarily just with the fit, it's with the cleanup. And the reason for that is because you're cleaning up soft plastic and using materials that are in some cases inherently harder. You're removing material that you don't want to remove. And I found I kept on having to go back to that. So last night I was using Gunsanyo Putty R on it, which went quite hard this morning, sanding that away. And I was finding I was having to keep going back over it to change that. Now, harder plastic doesn't do that. Once you've got those sections together, you're going to find that any material you put on the top of that is going to be the same density. And so when you're standing one lot away from it, the plastic is moving at the same point as the filler. This wasn't the case with this. And I found that I kept on having to go to this. So a job that should have taken me this morning only about an hour and a bit to clean up took me an entire morning before I was satisfied that this model was ready to go. That is nothing to do with the quality of the kit or the design or what Airfix have created as a model kit. It's simply down to the quality of the plastic. And I appreciate that I've got I've got a follower online who says that I never make a comment about quality plastic in kits, and that the reason I don't do that is because I get these kits sent to me, and we have this channel, and I'm an author, blah 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 blah. Well, I'm doing it now. So if you're watching, this is me talking with an Airfix designer online watching this as well about issues. Two Airfix. Oh, we've got two Airfix designers now. Oh, well, you as well. It's something that I think is kind of manifesting in the products that are made. This is the fourth Airfix kit I've made this year. I've already built 4. 2 of them you haven't seen, but I've built 4 Airfix kits this year, and they have varied in terms of quality of the plastic within each package. And Sometimes it's not made a difference. Sometimes it has. In this case, because it's big and it's got a big fuselage that traps a lot of detail inside a bomb bay, traps the wing spars, traps the cockpit and all of that sort of stuff. That made it difficult. So the two fuselage hulls, bringing those together was difficult. But with the Tiger Moth, which I revealed a couple of weeks ago, didn't have any issues with that. Everything ran on rails, dropped together. So
slightly more recent kit.
It is possible. I mean, I don't know when this kit was manufactured. I only know when it was sent to me. So I got it, I think, last year and everything. But I've got two other Airfix kits which will be crossing my desk in the next month or so, and that will be the Buccaneer, the S2, and the Blenheim Mark I, which I think we were going to talk about tonight, actually. Funnily enough, we might talk. Yeah, I mentioned it on Sunday. We can talk about it next Sunday.
I built the Blenheim Mark I. I built the 48.
The 48.
I had no problems with that whatsoever. In fact, Matt says the UK made kits have much better plastic.
So I don't know where this one was manufactured. All I know is my experience of it as a project. Now, I have to put out there that obviously the part of the sort of the issue is I'm working quickly, and I appreciate that scale modelers who are doing this for a hobby, all of our viewers, aren't working as fast as I am, so they can leave things to set and leave things to dry off properly and all of those kind of things. But it is an issue. What has been an issue with this kit? Does it make a massive difference to how I'm approaching it? Not really. Does it make a massive difference to what I think of the model currently as it stands and when it's finished? Probably not, but it is a point of some contention, I think, and certainly something that I think is worth kind of.
Well, as we always say, is you can only be honest, and I think that's hopefully what as much as we tend to be quite optimistic and quite. We are quite positive about so much in our hobby. Yeah. When there are things that aren't quite up to snuff, we mention them.
I mean, the thing is as well is I have to suggest as well that this is a pretty brave release from Airfix. I mean, the Mark II is a footnote really in the world of the Lancaster. Pretty much, it is. It's most people, I would hasten to suggest that have not really heard of a radial engine Lancaster. It's what happened when the Lancaster and the Halifax had a baby.
Do you know what? If I was to be perfectly honest with you, right, between you and me, right,
nobody else is watching, so it's fine.
No, literally nobody else is watching. I actually prefer the radial engined Lancasters. I think they just look better. I just think they look.
Do you?
I do. I like Merlin engined Wellingtons. Yeah, I think they look pretty cool. But
what do you think about the Merlin engined Beaufighter?
No.
So
for the simple reason. For the simple reason that the Merlin engined Beaufighter breaks up that Bristol aeroplane, Bristol engine kind of homogeny. I think it's suddenly you got interloper engines that have come from outside the county, mate. It's all here.
Of course, I forgot it's from your part of the world.
It's all here. It's all Filton. This all built here in Filton, boy.
The one thing that is sort of driving me forward on this, and you may recall that we had a conversation. Was it Sunday or last week about a kit? Getting into a kit and not being able to get into a kit and all that sort of. I was off and running with this thing. I started Monday morning. I was like, boom, and out I went. And I got hold of this book, which you've probably seen. Yes, this is the Wing Leader book, which is I think it's written by Richard Alexander, actually, of our parish. Yes, it is Richard Alexander's book. Anyway, got hold of this book. It's not for Mark IIs, although they are going to do another book which will include Mark II, which will be on the Mark II. And the one thing that's driving me forward on this, and I think why I might push the deadline back slightly, is they were disgusting in service, Lancasters. They were properly minging when you see them. There's a photograph in here that's hard to comprehend of how appalling they looked in service. and that's this one.
Oh, you see, there are some photographs of a Lancaster from above, like an aerial, and actually looking down on it, and just it looks like somebody's driven a tractor across the top of it. It looks like with a muck sprayer. It's just all across the top of it.
They say quite a lot in the book, and they say that even after only a few months of use, these Lancasters were absolutely disgusting to look at. The problem that I've got with this one, the Mark II, is that all of the Merlin-engined Lancasters have got their exhaust pipes at the top of the cowling, so they blow exhaust over the top of the wings. It's quite distinctive. But with the radial engined ones, all the exhausts are below, they're underneath. And at the moment, and if anybody can help me out with this, I'm trying to find an upper picture of a B2 from above to show how, if at all, any of the staining worked on the upper wings. Because
I'll go through my archives.
If you could, because obviously I'm going to weather this thing properly, and I'm going to really make it filthy. But I want to know exactly how the sort of exhaust staining worked. I'm assuming that it was under the wings, and perhaps over the underside of the tailplanes. But I can't find anything on that. But yeah, they were really filthy. I mean, properly filthy. And of course, they had the original matte black finish as well, which weathered in about 32 seconds. And then they changed it to a satin or a gloss black finish, which didn't weather quite so much. So you see later Lancasters don't look quite as filthy. But obviously, because this is an early one, this thing would have been just minging, absolutely minging.
I'll tell you something that I've noticed, because I've got a book here, which is, I think it's called The Royal Air Force in Colour or something, but these are actual proper period photographs, not colorized. Well, they're from the 1980s, published in the 1980s, so they're pre-70s actually, so they can't be digitally colorized. And one of the things that I noticed quite a lot in the color photographs of Lancasters and Stirlings and Wellingtons, Halifaxes, anything that was Bomber Command Night, was how brown that black could be sometimes. It almost took on this kind of earthy kind of hue to it, and it's not the lighting, it just genuinely takes on this kind of really kind of like dirty, muddy black color.
I mean, I'm certainly at the moment I'm trying to work out how best to sort of go about. When I did the Wellington, which is a lovely kit, by the way, the FX Wellington. When I did the Wellington, I messed about with it by bringing out surface structures with shading and highlights and all of that sort of stuff. Can't really do that with this. What I might do though is I might sort of play around with patina on it in the same way I did with the Defiant, in that I might have some areas that flat, some areas that satin, just to sort of pop things a little bit and make them just stand out. Because I don't know how you feel. Maybe I shouldn't say this really. Maybe this is the reason why I've not built a lot of World War II RAF bombers. I really think that the color scheme's really boring, and it needs work to try and sort of lift it slightly and make it a bit more interesting. And also, I was thinking today, this is only the second ever Second World War 4-engine bomber I've ever made in 45 years of building models. I've never built a Lancaster, so this is the first. The only other one I can think of that I've ever built was a B-17 that I made about 15 years ago for a friend. And I don't recall ever building another one. So yeah, I don't think I've ever done one. So and the Wellington, which I built 2 or 3 years ago, a couple of years ago, that was the first RAF World War II bomber I'd ever made. How is that even? Most kids go around building Lancasters and stuff like that, don't they? When they're back in the 70s, I just never did.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. We really are in the psychiatrist chair tonight, because that's fascinating as to why you've not built that many.
I just don't like the colour scheme.
Oh, yeah, I see. I do. I think they look fabulous.
Brown and green and black.
Yeah, I do. And I'll tell you something else. Something I would have done differently, and that is to have I'd have painted the dark green, dark earth first, and then because I've built Lancasters quite a few times for some odd reason. I think I built about 3 in the 1990s. Don't know why. And I found it was easier to spray the upper camouflage colors first, and then because of the shape of it, just then mask them off and spray the black, and that was it, and leave the wings off as well.
There's a very good reason why I haven't done that, and I did consider it. I haven't put any of the glazing in. So it would have meant that I was spraying brown through all of the glazing, whereas now I spray black through it. All the interior is black, and I don't have any. And all of the tail, the gun positions are all black. So all it means is that once I mask all of that off, I can fill the little holes, mask off the tail with a T-shaped piece of masking tape, and then do the brown. So I did. That's why I did it backwards, because I'm crystal clearing all of the glazing. I didn't want to mess about with masking those off. Although I do have this to use, as you might imagine, because I'm not, frankly, given a 5-day deadline to build a World War II 4-engine bombers, I'm not insane enough to spend the thick end of a day masking off turrets and glazing. So I bought one of these.
Now you mentioned Bristol Blenheim, and I've just quickly formatted a pic here because this was the 48 scale Airfix kit that I built going back about 3 years ago now. I remember looking at all the sprues and thinking, goodness me, I've got to build this for Telford in a couple of weeks' time. It structurally was complete in about 2 days. It was utterly, really went together quickly. But that was a bit of a challenge to do that black finish. And I'd seen a guy doing some salt weathering on, I think it was a Dornier 217 that he built in a night fighter scheme. And essentially, the areas around the engines, he had kind of laid down layers of light greys and browns, and he had used salt, to create the kind of the patchiness and the patina, and then he kind of applied the black over that. So that's essentially what I did on this one, and it worked for what I was trying to do, because rather than kind of have a weathered finish over the entire aeroplane, I checked with photographs as well, but I kept all that heavy weathering around by the center section of the wings and where the engines were. And I he says modestly, I think it worked, because it just and now with texture masks, you don't have to use salt. It's a much cleaner, tidier method of doing these.
Well, that's certainly. I suggested for Brett that the next 48 scale kit I build for him will be the Defiant. I've got some Edward stuff for it. I'm going to do it as a night fighter, and I'm going to play around with Tamiya colors on that: tire black, satin black, matte black, and a German grey to sort of add paneling onto it. But then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the texture masks to sort of break it all up again, break the whole finish up again, and then overspray it with black, sort of blend it back. So, but that will be a big experiment for me, because again, I don't think I've ever painted a black night fighter. I can't remember really whether I've ever painted anything overall black. I'm not sure that I have done that. So I think that'll be kind of interesting to see that. And also, I know that Brett Green, when he's painting, doing that, he adds red brown into the black to also alter the hue of it, which kind of works as well. And certainly sort of breaking up the finish that way. I think he did a bow fighter in that way. It is an odd, black is it is an odd color to work with.
Well, I was going to say, bear in mind that some of those Defiant night fighters had the night black applied over the day fighter camo, and on some of them, it started wearing away to reveal areas of dark green and dark earth.
Oh, that could be kind of a cool thing to do as well. Maybe a bit of hairspray on that would sort of bring that out. But certainly, going back to the Blenheim, the color scheme that I like in the kit is the desert one. I think that's really nice. I really love that as a color scheme, actually. And also I should say as well, I finally got a hold of some Azure Blue paint, the Mysticolor one that they do.
All right.
So I'm going to sort of try that out and see what that's
I'd also recommend, if you've not got it already, and that is the Alclad, I think it's the burnt iron.
All right, yeah.
For the collector rings, it's the perfect color, because you look at it and you go, oh, it's got a kind of like a bronzy color to it. And then when you look at it, you think, but it hasn't got any bronze in it.
Yeah.
It captures it. Jen Wright did something a few years ago. I hope she'll dig out the pictures at some stage. She did some weathering on a collector ring for something. I can't remember what it was. Might have been a Lysander or something. I'm probably misremembering it. But no, it was a swordfish. I'm sure it's a swordfish. And she absolutely nailed that. Again, that kind of weathered patina that you get on collector rings, where you just get that kind of the pitting of the color and everything. And it just looked, absolutely fabulous. So if Jen's watching this, we'll try and jog her to share that technique again.
Because you often see models that have these collector rings on, and they're done in this really bright brass color, and it just doesn't look right. It's a really kind of subdued shade of metal. So that's certainly something, but it gives me an idea of how to go about building those two. But the Blenheim, I missed first time round. I didn't get around to doing it. I do fancy that though. It's such an interesting design, such a great looking aeroplane anyway, but also with all of that glass at the front, there's a lot of detail that you can see inside of that.
You are going to want to invest in an Edward set for that. Trust me.
I think I probably will. I tend to really. It's the one thing that I do spend money on. If I've got a model that's got a lot of glazing on it, I will. Obviously, I wouldn't spend it for a tiger moth or anything like that, but or a 32nd scale tornado, because you can mask that off super easy without an Edward set. Yeah. But anything like a Lancaster or Halifax or what, which takes me back actually, the Halifax, that would have been my first 4-engine World War II bomber if I didn't stuff up the paint finish on that, not once, but twice. And the second time when I repainted it, I reversed the colors. I had on one wing, I had the green and the brown reversed. The rest of the airplane was all done and painted. When I came to do the final, I think it was like the right-hand wing, and I reversed the colors. And in the end, I was like, this is never going to be finished the way this is looking. And that's a nice kit too. That's
See, Matt says Blenheim is my personal favorite kit I've designed, so I'd love to see you do one. But not me, just you.
No,
see, unbelievable. See, he wants to see what you're going to do, and not me. Well, that's one less jar of chutney going out this Christmas.
All I can say is he knows which side his bread's buttered.
Unbelievable. The other thing I was going to say about canopies, we were going to have a kind of like a very loose talk tonight about our favorite shortcuts or something, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yes,
something. There was a text you sent me. I barely read it. And
you barely read anything I send through to you. And then all I got in response was, "Oh, please send it to me. I can't seem to find any way of doing anything."
Anyway,
help you out.
The thing that I do like using for canopy masks when I'm forced to mask my own canopies is actually bare metal foil. Now,
it's good stuff.
People will go, goodness me, that's an expensive way of masking canopies. Probably, but I've got a sheet of bare metal foil that I bought 10 years ago, and I'm barely 1/8 of the way through it. But the thing with bare metal foil is, some people do find it's very tricky to remove from the clear parts. The trick to that is very good tweezers. Now, you know those here we go. The influencers are back. Yeah, we're back. But you know those tweezer sets that, he's going to go and get them in the blue pouch. There we go. These are the ones that we got off Amazon for something like that's them. They are just absolutely rock solid. The best tweezers I've ever used. And what was it? That 10 in there for about £7 or something?
Yeah, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 in here.
Nine.
Well, yeah, they were just over a £5 or something ridiculous, weren't they?
And I do believe, I think Craig Sargent's watching tonight, because I think I sent him a set as well. But they were just absolutely brilliant tweezers. They are the best tweezers I've ever used, and the really pointy, scary looking pointed ones, they are perfect. That's the ones you just get the edge of the bare metal foil on the canopy, and then you pull it all off in one go. It doesn't tear. It doesn't leave any residue behind. They're brilliant. I love those tweezers. We'll have to try and find the link for them again, and then, get people buying them.
These Pixnor ones, they're identical to the ones that were produced by, because I've got one in here, Master Tools, which might be something to do with Trumpeter, I think. And also Adam Wilder's company as well had some very similar ones. But we essentially, was it, I can't think of it, whether it was me that bought them first or who knows. But everyone was
Drew.
Was it Drew? And then we all started putting stuff. So we all and then we all went, yeah, we all had those, and there was this massive spike of people buying
trending on Amazon.
Yeah, they are really good. If you get a chance, that's the company name there.
I'm just having a quick look on. I'm just going through my order history on Amazon, and here we go. Pixnor tweezers.
Pixnor.
Ordered 8th of September 2017, and oh goodness me, they've actually gone up in price.
Really?
Yeah, well, I think we've obviously we kind of like we ruined the market, Brian, for these, and
how much exactly have they gone up to?
They've pretty much doubled. They're £14.
No.
Yeah.
That's absolutely a shocker. That wasn't how much we paid for them.
That's not how much we paid for them, because I actually went out and bought 3 sets or something.
I bet that masking tape that we mentioned a couple of weeks ago has gone up by about £12 as well.
Yeah, although...
Did you order some of that, by the way?
No, I didn't get around to it. Although, oddly... No, there is some very similar sets by other companies. Essentially, they're still in that blue kind of wrapper, but they are they're just different labeling on them. But they appear to be the same tweezers, and they're only about a tenner. So I don't know what's going on there.
I have to say, I mean, we mentioned it. We did talk about this a few weeks ago. I do sort of hunt around on Amazon for sets of things like paintbrushes and all of that sort of stuff. And I got a set of flat paintbrushes, which are in the holder behind me, which cost me, I think, £14. And there was something like 10 of them or something. And they're really nice. And I used them for doing some dry brushing, and they work really well. So I'm always on the hunt for things like that, and sanding sponges and all sorts of bits and pieces. And I did say this the last time we talked about this. It's always good to aim for things that aren't for model makers. Hunt around for, if you're looking for brushes for artist brushes and all that sort of stuff, but also brushes for the beauty industry and everything. You find some really amazing stuff. So very much worthwhile. The
only time I won't buy paintbrushes off the internet is when it actually comes to things like double O's, triple O's, pointy detail paintbrushes. I even when I go to artist shops, I will pick up 5, and usually there'll be 3 of them will just be not quite to my impeccable standards. And so
I have to say, I am terrible sometimes with paintbrushes. Okay, this paintbrush here.
Oh dear.
Okay, I don't know if you can see this.
Yeah, ish.
Citadel layer brush. Okay.
Yeah.
This brush has still got paint on it. That's if you can sort of see that. This is the one I use for all of my detail painting. This brush, and I've been using this now for nearly a year. This one brush, and I can't. And all I do is I bought this, which is 100% acetone, and all I do is I clean it off in the acetone, and this is the brush that I use. for every piece of detail painting that I do. Now, it could be argued that my detail paint is crap, and this is the reason why. But there's something about this brush that I really love, and I use it all day. I use it every day. All the detail painting that'll be on the Lancaster, all detail painting on everything else, with this one brush. And I've bought loads of brushes since this brush. I bought this probably 3 or 4 years ago from Shrewsbury, but I love it. I can't get one that I like as much.
I can actually testify that you bought more brushes, because we were in that art shop on Park Street.
In their art shop
just before lockdown last year.
Opposite Banksy's very famous.
And because you remember, we signed up for their loyalty scheme. So
given that I haven't bought anything else from, did we? Oh yeah, we did.
Cassart, that's it. Cassart, Park
good
Street,
art
Bristol.
shop, actually.
Very good art shop.
That's where you bought your bottle of distilled turpentine from.
It was, and I got the big bottle of Galleria. I think it's Galleria because it's gallery. Galleria. Very careful how we say that. Satin varnish, which is brilliant stuff. That is absolutely brilliant stuff. But yeah, I got the brushes that we ended up buying in there were the Pro Arte miniature series.
Yes.
Now they're semi-synthetics, but they are brilliant paint brushes.
They're really good brushes.
Really good paint. And I think when we got them, I think the entire range was £3.50 a brush. Yeah,
it was. Yeah.
Which is staggering.
I also bought a little pack of 3 brushes from the bookshop that's in Mere Park, the garden centre, and they got some little brushes, and they were selling them for like £2 or something. And I thought they were really good as well. So I tend to have brushes that I use for stirring paint or adding washes and all of that sort of stuff, and then I have brushes that I use for other things. The one brushes that I really destroy are the ones I use for dry brushing, and it doesn't matter. They just get destroyed.
Well, it's like in Poundland, those sets of the is it Dana Rowney? They're doing little sets.
Yeah.
They're ideal because you're not going to use them for delicate work, so you just want something cheap and cheerful that is just going to blitz through, for dry brushing and stuff like that.
Well, this is an idea of how you can sort of see just how that's just through dry brushing on small details. They get destroyed, so you get through these like 10 a penny. And going back to bare metal, we can. I have a little car.
Oh yes, you're still working on that.
Yeah, I'm still working on this. It's now kind of polished.
Oh! Look at that, ladies and gentlemen! Look how shiny his car is. Showing off now.
Okay, so it is polished now. I'll do that.
What did you use to polish it?
What did I use to polish it? I used I micromeshed it, and then I used the Novus glazing polish.
Was that? Did you've put the decals on? You've put a couple of coats of clear over the top of that, and then you've let that harden off for a week or so, and then
no. I let it harden off just overnight, actually,
okay.
And then I micromeshed it slightly, and then I used Novus to polish it, and then I gave it a very thin coat of normal car polish, the spray stuff, just to give it a thing. What I have done on this, despite the fact that I gave it 2 or 3 coats of clear, I've actually on one wing I've actually taken it through very slightly. I can see it's gone very slightly through the blue into the white, but I am not about to repaint part of this car because, as you can see, I am not repainting that. But anyway, going back to the bare metal, I used bare metal foil for all of the trim. So all of the trim work around here, I used the foil for that, and it works really brilliantly. It blends in nicely as well. It goes around curves. It's perfect for that. And I thought about painting it, painting it gloss black, masking it, painting the gloss black, and then putting this. But then I thought, what I'm going to end up doing is the same sort of thing I ended up with the Tiger Moth. So I'm going to have that very slight step where you can see a ridge of the underlying color. So I went with bare metal foil. It's brilliant material to use, and it like you say, for canopies, it goes over double curves like a dream. Just with I grab a cotton bud and then just buff it in and all of that kind of stuff. And I know that going back 10, 15 years. One of the guys that built aircraft models for Francois in the factory, he only ever used bare metal foil to mask canopies. He never used anything else. And a lot of the photographs from back in the day show the canopies being masked off with that. But he didn't seem to have too much problem either getting it off. But I know a lot of people kind of do really, and peeling it off, and residue being left on the plastic. So, but I've not found any of that.
Anthony Bird asks, "Is that the anti-static coat?"
Anti-static, the gloss coat. I'm assuming that's what it means. No, it's just it's actually, to me, is clear.
Right.
The lacquer clear though, so it is. The anti-static finish. Oh, the polish. No, it's the red one. Let me just grab it.
We've got a couple of shout outs here for ABC brushes, are fantastic quality for their quality, price, and range. And also, Andy Brennan says, ABC, my first stop at Telford. So there we go. Novus plastic polish.
That's it there. That was it. Yeah, there is another one that you can use, which is an anti-static that you kind of finally polish it with. But I didn't bother with that. It was just done with this. And then the car spray is behind my seat. It's just a spray, like a one coat wax that I used on it. I did say that I wasn't going to polish it too much, but once I sort of started, I thought I'll carry on with this. But despite its finish being like this, and being this smooth and this neat, it is still going to be weathered. I'm still weathering this car. It isn't going to look like a kind of showroom finish. It will have road dust on it, and it's going to have all of its wheels are going to be weathered, and the inside's going to be weathered. And I have actually done the seats as well. So they look kind of cool, don't they? So, and I've tried to sort of incorporate sort of different patinas inside that. But I still go back to what I said before with car models. They're just like on another level with certain things that you have to think about trying to get the finish right. And but I'm really enjoying it. It's nice. It's a nice little project. But that bare metal foils, it's sort of transformed the way I've thought about doing things like that. And I used it on the little Honda last year, and that's what made me sort of think about doing it on this. So if anybody has not used bare metal foil, John will tell you it's well worth having in your bag of tricks.
I think I probably paid about £8-9 for a sheet. But like I say, I bought over the years. I bought the matte aluminium. I bought the chrome.
Yeah,
and I tend to use the matte aluminium for masking canopies. But that, as I say, that sheet it's a decade old now, and I haven't even kind of eaten into it. So
yeah,
people who say, "Oh, that's an expensive way of masking canopies," no, it really isn't.
In fact,
So you've used it more than I have.
Yeah. So, but to give you an idea, this was I bought this one was $7.95, and I've been to the States for years. So that's how long I've had it.
I think the other thing is when people say that's an expensive way to mask canopies. Well, masking a canopy that goes all wrong and you end up trashing the model, that's an expensive way to mask a canopy because you've written off the entire model there.
Yeah. I wonder how much, we can obviously get this in the UK, but it'd be interesting to see how much it compares in terms of price in the the United States compared to how much it is over here. I've only ever used the chrome. I've never had any. There are other colours, aren't there? You say matte aluminium is one.
Yeah, I got the matte aluminium. It's quite nice.
Yeah, be interesting to sort of see how that works and everything. And I've never used it on anything particularly big either. I've used it on trim like this, but I've certainly not used it on like a cowling or a part of an aircraft. I think that would be quite cool.
not for its intended purposes.
No. I've only ever used it. Yeah. Although I have to say, I wouldn't mind building something like that.
Oh, yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
That is just so lovely.
Well, I tell you what, you'll be able to invest in huge swathes of bare metal foil for when you actually get around to building your Greyhound bus.
Oh, I can't wait for that Greyhound bus. I have to say. And also, we are going to talk about this on Sunday. How on earth did we miss that helicopter? How did we miss that?
We've managed to completely miss Micromere in entirety. But yeah, that Carmen,
The Carmen. How did we do
fabulous.
that? It was just a bit bizarre. But also today I had an email come through because I'm on their mailing list from Caracal, and they've got some really lovely decal sheets coming out. The one I posted on my page today, and also on the interesting page as well, is the one for F-15As. The AD TAC F-15As, including 48th FIS, which is my favourite F-15 squadron. It's got my favourite tail markings on it. It's beautiful. But amongst that as well, they're also doing a set for all 48 scale Tamiya Sky Raider, the US Air Force one, and they're doing a set for the A-10 and also the Osprey as well. So there's some really nice decals coming out from Caracal. They're a really, really good company. They produce some really nice schemes.
Here we go.
Yeah, there you go. So if you scroll sort of, is that just the, that's, I mean, 48th FIS one there. Look at it. Just look at it. One that's 3 down, 4 down. They're just beautiful, aren't they? But you'd build any one of those, wouldn't you? They're all lovely.
I am seriously really kind of like tempted to. I'm tempted to want to build a Tamiya F-15 as well.
Yeah, that's certainly what they're going to go on. That's for sure. But if you go on to, actually, John, as you're on their website, if you go onto their homepage, it might show the some of the new releases, and we can take a little sneaky peek at what's coming.
Oh, news! There we go.
News. Yeah, there you go. So you've got some.
Actually, that's quite old news.
A little bit out of date. Yeah.
Perhaps we need to go to Facebook. I'll go to the Facebook page.
Yeah, they've certainly got some nice choices in there as well, and obviously they do a lot of American subjects, but they're happy to pick prototypes as well. You may remember that they did the prototype Harriers, but also they did prototype F-15s, and I think they did Tomcats as well, didn't they?
They did indeed do
prototype Tomcats as well, which look really cool. So that's something else. So if you're not seeing anything from Caracal, give them a look, because they're right up our street. We really kind of love them. And I know Mike Reeves is watching at the moment. And yes, Mike, I think as well, I should say, I may use some of those decals on a monogram F-15 if that's possible. I think that would make Hornets. Yeah, they did the blue and white Hornets, which were beautiful. I think they did the FSD ones, which were very, very nice. So yeah, anyway, going back to what we were going to talk about tonight.
Now with 2 minutes of the show left. Yeah, go on.
Yeah, we can extend it for another 15 minutes. Because at half time at the football. Oh, by the way, before we go, well done to Wasps Rugby Union and the mighty Sky Blues. Finally got Coventry City back to the Ricoh Arena, which is fabulous news. I have one very excited and very happy wife who cannot wait to get back to the Ricoh to watch the football next season. Come on, boys. Yes. So things that make your life easy. That was what we were talking about today.
Yes. Welcome to an hour into the show. Now here's the topic.
Yes. I was accused of being an iconoclast by Dave Fleming. I had to look up what iconoclast
I had to look that up as well, yeah.
Yeah, and I was like, I felt slightly affronted at first. But then I thought, actually, I probably am what I'm being accused of there. And it was really down, it comes back to a conversation that was had by Phil Flory a few years back, where he'd done a video, and on his video, he was painting the parts on the sprues. And I think he came in, if I remember rightly, and if Phil ever watches this, and this isn't the way the story was, please correct me. But from what I remember, he got a bit of abuse from people who said, that's not how you do it. You don't, why are you still painting parts on the sprues? Isn't that what kids do, kind of thing? Haven't you sort of developed your techniques beyond that? And it sort of caused a bit of a rumble, and we were talking about it for a while afterwards. And I was like, well, I still do that. And I know Brett still does that, because He's posted photographs of in books and magazines of that. And so today I was painting them, and I can now show you they are painted. So I have black undercarriage parts that are on here. And so I sort of made the comment about doing this and painting things on sprues because it makes life easier. Why would I spend time finding ways to mount those parts to paint them when I already have the perfect mounting for them? All of these parts are cleaned up, and they're all hanging off places that when they're on the model will be hidden.
So to just clarify here, because I think perhaps this is where there might be a little bit of misunderstanding, and we know how a little misunderstanding on the internet becomes a praxis shockwave. I think sometimes people may be interpreting that as a bit like the old kit instruction sheets. It's easier to paint the parts while they're still on the sprue, is that you haven't actually cleaned any of them up, that you are painting them and you're just like, I painted them and I know there's a seam, I know there's a mold part line on there, but I simply don't care. I've actually
cleaned them up. They are cleaned up. I've done all of the seam lines and all of that sort of stuff. And in fact, I've also pushed this idea further with things, and I've built sub-assemblies on the sprues where you've got a part that has other details attached onto it. And if that sub-assembly contains parts that are essentially the same colors and all that sort of stuff, it's a benefit to glue them all together around the sprue and spray them in place. As long as you can. Sorry,
I was going to say, I actually did that on the Panzer IV. There were certain bits and pieces, that periscopes and things that went inside the hatches, that I thought, well, we may as well glue them in place, glue the periscopes onto the hatches while the hatch is still on the sprue, because all this is going to be Panzer grey anyway.
Yes.
And then when I snip it off, actually the attachment point is actually the hinge anyway.
Yes.
So they're still on the sprue.
Yeah. So if you've got an area where it's easy to clean that up, which in this case there will be, it's a lot easier to clean up a tiny little area here, this attachment point, than it would be for me to sort of hold this and also run the risk of damaging these parts by kind of holding them while you're painting them. I don't know what you're like, and a nightmare.
You know me.
I have a suspicion that I already know the answer to this before I say it. But when I'm building, and especially when I'm painting, I'm constantly washing my hands. Constantly, I wash my hands probably certainly every half an hour. I would wash my hands as soon as I feel that they feel like they're getting warm and they're getting greasy. I'll go out and I'll wash them. Whereas I don't need to think about that quite so much if I'm holding something like this, and then I can paint and I can kind of weather it, and then kind of carry on. So I'm always trying to find ways to speed up the process for me. And again, I'll go back to the point I made earlier on, that it's a difference between being a professional who needs to get something done for a deadline and a hobbyist who doesn't have to do that. The other thing that I do, and I've certainly done this on this model and on the car, is I will build in color blocks. Anything that has to be satin black, I'll build everything that's satin black and spray the whole lot in one go. Even if it's out of order, out of sync of the instructions, I'll do that. Anything that has to be interior green will be interior green and built and painted and done all in one go. And that way I'm cutting down on the amount of time that I'm needing to clean the airbrush out. So I'll paint something, and then I'll kind of deal with it, and I'll sort of move on. I'm always trying to find ways of minimizing the amount of time I spend with the airbrush in my hand, if I can get it all painted, and also get it all painted so that if certain things need to be drying out, especially gloss finishes I always leave for 3 or 4 days usually, although the car body shell, I was okay with that because it was a lacquer and it seemed to be hard anyway. So I sort of tend to try and find ways of doing that. The other thing I do, and I'm actually getting to the point where I'm starting to think this might be self-defeating, and actually is slowing me down rather than speeding me up, is I tend to build all of the sub-assemblies in one go at the start of a project. Anything that's in 2 halves, I glue together. Anything that's a sub-assembly, I glue together. But the problem with that I'm finding is that then what I've got is a massive pile of parts that need to be painted all in one go. And then psychologically, I'm looking at it going, that's a massive load of parts that I need to paint all in one go. Whereas if I'm working on it kind of in stages, do the cockpit, paint it, do the jet pipes, paint them, do the intakes, paint them, I'm breaking it down. Whereas at the moment, I'm not breaking anything down. It just becomes a massive load of painting to do and then bring it kind of all together. So I might have to rethink that. But overall, it's just a way of finding systems that are sort of working. And certainly the keeping stuff on sprues seems to, I don't know, it seems so old fashioned, and yet it's a perfect way of
no, I agree with you. I still do it. And like yourself, I will clean up, actually, one of the things that I will sometimes do is I will actually, things like undercarriage legs, I will give them a blast while they're on the sprue. I'll give them a blast of something like Mr. Surfacer Black. Then I will take the mold part line off because I can see where it is. It's much easier. And also for undercarriage legs, if they are white or silver, I always think black is a better base coat for them because you get a much more solid, more vibrant color. I know this is like the I think I told that story the other week about using black as a base for putting white on top, and I've been doing it like that for years, and for the simple reason that I find that because you've got a much more instant contrast, you're getting a much better assessment of how the white is actually going on there. You see, if you're doing it on grey, you got less contrast. And in the end, I actually did this one occasion, literally 2 identical measures in an airbrush cup, one over black, one over grey. I used less paint to go over the black than I did with the grey.
That's really good. That's actually a really good experiment.
Yeah, and also the black then gives you that really solid basis for the white. If I was building something like a car that needed to have a white finish, if the car was molded in white and it needed to have a white finish, used to be in the magazines, the reviewer would say, and rather conveniently, the model is molded in white, which should make painting it white easier. Actually, that's a nightmare. I will go over that with a can of Mr. Surfacer Black, and then I will go over it with the white.
Yeah,
because white plastic, you put white paint over white plastic, it's going to be translucent.
Yeah, it's completely counterintuitive, and yeah, it works. It really does work. One of the things, the other thing that came up today as well was I posted a photograph of the Lancaster where I'd sprayed around. If you want to pull this up,
yeah, I was just going to mention that. Yeah,
but where I'd sprayed around joint lines and everything. I'd finished sanding it down and sprayed around, and I made a point in there that I never prime models, and I use prime in inverted commas, which is what I did in there. If I'm using lacquer paints or Tamiya acrylics that are thinned with lacquer thinners, with Mr. Colour leveling thinner, I don't understand why modelers put a primer coat down. And the reason for doing that, if I'm using a vinyl acrylic, Vallejo or AK Interactive or MIG Productions, those kind of acrylics, then I would put a primer down because that stuff doesn't bond properly to plastic and it will lift. Extra acrylics is another one where it doesn't, where it lifts. But this stuff bonds perfectly to plastic, and the primer that you're likely to be putting down underneath this is essentially this anyway, just different color. The only exception that I would make to that is if I used a lot of metal, a lot of etched brass, that kind of thing. I may want to homogenize that finish, and also anything sticking to metal can be slightly problematic.
I am going to cite as evidence against you. No, your monogram Starfighter. You had to put primer on that. Because it was molded in yellow.
It was molded in yellow, and also there was a lot of filling and sanding in that as well, and that's one of the reasons why I checked it. But most natural metal finishes that I paint are primed, again in inverted commas, are primed with AS12, which is essentially what LP is. And so I don't tend to put primer layers on. It seems counterintuitive to me. Doesn't appear to have any benefit when you're using those type of paints. And I know that certain people, and they may even be watching this at some point, certain people say you have to prime everything. We're not talking about a 1970s, you know, Morris car that's likely to rust outside because it hasn't got a decent layer of primer on it. We're talking about a plastic model kit. Plus, there shouldn't be any kind of reaction to that. The only thing that would make me sort of change that is if I was doing a natural metal finish, I wanted to put gloss black, and I use a black primer or gloss black primer for alclads and those kind of things. You need a primer layer for that because obviously it's the way the system works. Also, if a car is molded in red as well, because sometimes if a body is molded in, or a plastic kit is molded in red, sometimes that plastic can leach through an upper color, and that's happened. That can happen. So I'm just going to go and
find a picture. Yep.
So you would maybe make you would put a barrier layer under that if you were putting another color over the top of it. I know I've read articles where car modelers, for instance, have painted a car molded in red white, and it's come through, and it started over time, it started to leach through, and you get that kind of pinking of the color. So you might want to think about it then as kind of a barrier. Years ago, I would spray absolutely everything that I ever built in Halford's grey primer, everything. And especially aircraft, I would spray them in grey primer. And then what I ended up having to do was sand the primer down, because the primer was rougher than the underlying plastic. And then I would spray over the top of that with Tamiya acrylics. And then I thought, one day I sort of sat there and I thought, why am I doing this again? And the reason was I'd got into that mindset that that's what I had to do, and so I carried on. So now it's another way. It's another way of getting rid of another layer of paint that can possibly cause issues. The less paint I have on the model, the less issues, the quicker I get it done.
Well, I'll say with that Tamiya Panzer IV, I just thought, well, for goodness sake, you know, I'm going to be. I couldn't see the logic, although I have done this in the past, but I couldn't see the logic of going over it with a can of Tamiya grey primer, fine grey primer, which I love. It's great paint, and then going over it again. Well. Then going over it again with the Panzer Grey, with a can of Panzer Grey, because the spray can, the TS4 Panzer Grey, to me, that's just the quickest way of getting a paint down, and the finish is as good as an airbrush. It is really silky smooth. However, the one exception to that is when I'm kind of experimenting and I'm trying out new ideas, and again this is something I find works. This is where we started the show, actually. This is something I find works especially well with olive drab on vehicles. And that is to actually start with a grey primer layer, you see, then go in and start pre-weathering, not pre-shading, but pre-weathering areas in different colours. So around particularly muddy areas, I will put in a lot of reds and browns and, you know, things like that. Then on some of the upper areas, I might go in with some very pale, almost like Sky Type S or zinc chromate kind of yellows and pale yellows and things and whatever. And when you end up then with a model that looks, frankly, it looks distressed. It's meant to, you know, it looks absolutely horrific. Then I go in with a mix of the olive drab. So it'll be a hot olive drab. So it'll be a Tamiya, or it'll be a Gunsey, or it'll be a Mr. Color. I go with a mix of that, which is about 60% paint, 40% a gloss clear to make it satin. And that in itself is probably mixed to about 60% paint, 40% thinner. So it's got volume, but it's not entirely, it's got a little bit of translucency to it. Then I'm just working that over the surface, because the beauty of that is that you're then able to, you know, you're able to kind of work it over the surface, and bit by bit you're able to blend stuff, but you're able to blend it with more subtlety. Now, at this stage, people will say, people go, oh, well, that's not how real tanks are painted. A bloke didn't go into the factory and do this and then do this. Yeah, I know that. You know, we're not recreating the painting process of the tank. No. What we are looking at is this is an end result I'm looking at. Yeah. This is a finish that I'm looking at. I'm trying to work out other methods that I can do in order to, what you are aiming for is the finish. Don't worry about the process. It's the finish. Now, people, I've seen people say that they go, oh, pre-shading airplanes. Oh, they don't do that at the factory. A bloke doesn't go around with an airbrush with a spray gun and does no. But plastic kits do not fly at supersonic speeds. They do not fly at high altitude. They are not subjected to the extremes of heat and cold. So what you are doing is you are looking at an object. You are seeing effects going on with them. And then you are thinking, well, how can I do that? Now, on the Panzer IV, I'm actually I've actually gone, again, this could be the mental block thing, is that I've gone almost the factory route. This thing is now covered in grey. Now we're going to put the weathering on top of that. If I'd have thought about it, I'd have probably got this thing almost finished now. If I'd have sprayed it in grey primer, done all that kind of pre-weathering, because I'm using the grey primer layer as part of that weathering process, you see, which some people don't like. Fine, my models, my rules. And then go over that with a translucent satiny Panzer grey mix, and then just start knocking everything down, and you're kind of like you're getting that kind of patina, that finish. As I say, I am. Unlike, and I understand why you do things to a certain methodology. Well, come back to that. Methodology. It is, and I haven't even had a drink. Methodology, and that is because you are doing this professionally. You have to get results. You have got no time for experimentation. On the other hand, I'm the hobbyist, so I think to myself, right, we're going to shake things up this time. We're going to try something a bit different, and we're going to.
I will happily experiment, but I know that behind that experimentation is there's a bedrock of my technique that will get me out of trouble if I make a mess of it. That's sort of and that's where I always start from. But I'm always happy. The Hellcat was a huge experiment to get those yellow wings, if you remember. And then the F-14D Tomcat was the first time I'd used the texture templates, which all of a sudden became very, very popular. I seem to remember following that.
Oh, you influencer, you.
Well, yeah, and yes, you may recall though.
Can you just move the MacBook further away so your head will fit the screen?
No. There is method in this story. You may recall though that I was slightly niggly because over that because a certain individual had suggested that I was merely copying them, despite the fact they'd been blocked for about 3 years and I'd missed the whole thing. So yes. But yeah, I'm happy to experiment. I'm happy to do all of those kind of things. But on the whole, if I'm doing something to a deadline, if I'm working to a deadline, Lancaster, I will never experiment on that. I won't ever. I can't afford to.
No.
I won't experiment with the finish. I won't experiment with the paints I use. I won't experiment with the glues. I won't experiment with anything. I can't afford for it to go south when I know that it's got to be finished by the weekend. But other things I will certainly experiment with. That ICM Tiger Moth with the way that I did all the wings and all of those kind of things, you might recall. So I'm happy to do that. And I think it's important for you to if you're developing your own style, to be able to experiment. I think I've now hit a point where my models are sort of recognizable by people. I've hit a style that works for me. Whether or not I'm likely to develop that very far over the next few years is open to.
You see, as I said earlier on at the beginning, as I said earlier on at the beginning, that one of the things I might do to clear the blockage at the moment is I'm going to slap together one of those little, because I've got to build them anyway, but I'm going to slap together one of those little Zvezda. It's either going to be the T-34 or I think it's a Su-70, Su-76 or an Su-100. It's same chassis anyway. Slap one of those together, because that construction on that is going to take an evening, if that.
Yeah.
And then give it a coat, to me, a fine grey primer. Then I'm just going to go in there with pre-weathering coats and everything, blah, 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 blah. And then I'll get the 4BO and blend it all back in. Now, you see, even describing that to you, I can think to myself, yeah, I know exactly where I'm going with that. I know precisely the route. I think the error, as I said just now, the error I made with the Panzer IV was gave it a nice, even, lovely, fresh, beautiful looking coat of grey. Now I'm thinking, where do I go? Where do I go? Although weirdly, that's what I did with the Opel Blitz radio truck last year.
But if it helps with a lot of those things, a lot of the models that I built last year, they all had solid color codes. They weren't. I didn't pre-shade them or anything like that. There were a lot of those were based on solid color codes. I think that it can be, can't it? It's my aircraft are never kind of pre-weathered or pre-worked or anything like that. I tend to start with flat coats and then sort of work my way back. But sometimes you look at a model and go, how do I make that interesting though? What have I done? I don't know how I can change this. It can be slightly disconcerting. So I mean, we go back to the little car. Obviously, it's a finish. It's just one color, one tone, which will need to be kind of weathered away from that, and also the Lancaster chances are going to be like that. How do I make that interesting? It's a nice challenge though, but the finish is it's almost. This goes back at the risk of being drummed out of the modeller's society. This goes back to the point we made earlier on. The finish is almost too good on that Panzer IV. For you to sort of weather around it, if that's not a slightly contentious thing to say, armored vehicles often need that degradation before you start, and that's sort of tonal.
Well, I'm just calling up an image here, which is, let's just go share screen. Let's go to Chrome tab, and we go to Facebook. There we go. If you can see that was the Svesta Sherman that I built at the beginning of the year, and we've got the Messenger tab open. So no, we haven't. I don't know what's going on there. Let's call that up. And that was sprayed in grey primer. Then I did a whole load of kind of like coloured weathering on it before I put the olive drab on. Actually, in the end, I ended up losing a lot of those early base layers because I was actually a little bit too almost a little bit too cautious in covering up the work. I should have been much more. I was a little bit too conservative in covering up. I should have been a little bit more free and let more of that pre-shading actually kind of show through in the end. So it's funny, sometimes you can, the effect you're going for, you can do it, and then you kind of like you try and just cover it up a little bit more, and then before you know it, you've actually lost the effect you were looking for in the first place. And again, the key there is to actually use translucent layers of color rather than solid layers of color, because I find that's the in fact I think I've just found, there we go, look, this is let's just go share screen. It's all very professional, this. There we go. So you can see there, that's what it looked like. That was the grey primer with all this kind of like pre-coloring going on. And then, you can see there exactly, and then the idea was that as the olive drab went on, it would just start knocking it back and knocking it back and knocking it back. I'm just seeing, just scrolling down. No, you can't see it. I didn't get an intermediate shot. But anyway, let's talk amongst yourselves while I try and find that picture of that.
Maybe in this case, it's that you should sort of think about how the real vehicle would have weathered. So put on your dust layers, and then work them away. Don't worry about tonal shifts and patinal shifts across the surface of the vehicle. Work only on effects from environmental impact on the vehicle, dust, mud, all of those kind of things, and just leave the grey in place. You can overspray layers of dust, as you've done on there, onto the model, and use those to shift and build the layers back from that initial layer of dust.
The key thing on that Opal Blitz, which was an effect that I remember thinking, yep, we'll do that more next time, and that is to get the contrast between you're putting in like a really heavy dust layer along the bottom and lower edges of the vehicle, and it's a really kind of pale, almost a kind of warm pale grey. And then that then becomes the basis that you can then apply darker colours on top, which just then starts building up that kind of patina of, of it adds that depth, it adds that, it just adds something. And especially if you're doing it where you're kind of adding mud splashes and things, is you can start adding darker mud splashes. They will show up over that dust layer. And it tells a story. It creates a narrative for the model, which I think is
the other thing that works on dark colours like the dark grey that you're using is not to use dark washes on it.
No.
Use pale washes on it. So around all of the bolt heads, around all of those kind of details and everything, wash pale colours into it and let the grey be the standout.
Well, the thing is, the thing that I've seen people do, which is an effect I like, and I know people say, "Oh, you shouldn't kind of like copy other people's models." I'm sorry, if I like an effect and I think I want to have that effect on my models, I will copy it. I don't care. It's my workshop. It's my rules.
I've never copied anybody's model in my life,
apart from Francois. Exactly.
I spent an entire year doing it.
But the thing is I've done it on a couple of models before, and that is, again, it's that pre-weathering layer. So on the Panzer IV, what I'm thinking I should do is go in and put the kind of like dusty corners and things, but also a lot of the kind of like things like the bolt heads and everything is actually go over them with a little bit of dust, create like a ring of dust around them, or like a thing of dust on them, because then I can put dark washes in there, but you'll get that nice contrast between the shadowy area of the bolt head, which then feathers out to that dusty kind of thing, which then feathers out into the actual main finish as well. Marcus does it quite a bit on his models, and I just think it looks fabulous.
I think I did it on the back of the. Let me just grab it.
Yeah. So there's the roof of my Opel Blitz radio truck, which that was done with the. That was done with the texture mask, and that was different layers of color, all put over the top of it, and then finally one kind of blending layer to just kind of put everything in there. So
I did it on the back. There aren't any dark washes on this.
Yeah.
So if you can sort of see, you can focus in on.
Yeah.
That. So you can sort of see they're all, and the same around all of the wheels as well. They're only light washes. The only area on this model that has a dark wash in it are the engine grills. Everywhere else, all of the detail is defined by light washes, because obviously it's quite a dark color, and you can kind of see how that sort of manifested itself on the sort of the front here, and also if you can see that. And it just works on this. It just makes it look dusty rather than making it look kind of defined, if you know what I mean. So
I think what I'm going to do is get it all cleared, clear the workbench, give it a nice clean down, which I tend to do. If you can always, if there's a smell of bleach in the house, it's because I've just cleaned the workbench down again. But that is actually, again, we talk about psychological blocks and things. That workbench pretty much daily gets cleaned down with spray bleach, because even when I'm halfway through a project, I suddenly think to myself, I need to stop, clear the workbench, give everything a clear down. Then I'm kind of back into like a fresh psychological mood to actually get on with the project again. But I'm going to do that, and then I'm just going to get my awesome Fender 27 pounds airbrush, and I'm going to load it up with some Deck Tan. To me, a Deck Tan, good neutral color. And I'm going to start putting in some of the weathering layers, the dust layers, because if I mess it up, I do what I know I can do, and that's just go back there with some Panzer Grey in the airbrush and then blend it back in again. Why? The problem is, Spencer, and this is it. I'm trying to do it correctly first time round.
Yeah.
Right. Rather than in the past, I always used to be, well, if I make a mess of it, I know I can still go in there and blend it with grey.
Yeah.
I'm actually, it's almost like an arrogance or a bit of egotism that I'm like, I'm going to try and do it first time. And because I'm going to try and do it first time and cut out a process and a step, I think that is also contributing to the block.
Mm. We all have them. There's no doubt about it. We all have them, and you know, it's because it's an artistic pursuit, and you're working on something that you want to look great when it's finished. And you know, nobody sets out to build a bad model. Nobody. I don't care whether you're a rank beginner or you're the best model maker on the planet. Nobody sets out to build something that's poor. Everybody sets out to build the best they can, and sometimes that desire to produce something that's the best you can produce gets in the way.
Not strictly true. Shall I tell you why? Because at the 11th hour, the 11th minute of the 11th hour, honestly, literally, with the presses about to roll, ring, 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 ring it up, and then hello, Jonathan, it's your publisher here. You see, I like saying that. And I said, yes, Mr. Publisher. And they said, there's one thing lacking from your book. What's that then? We need a photograph of a bad model. Have you got any? You see, how dare you? How dare you? So I said, no, but give me half an hour. Went up into the attic, got an Airfix Spitfire Mark IX, the old Johnny Johnson one, that one. And I sat there and I got some tube glue and I glued it together with tube glue. And while the glue was still wet and the wing was half kind of trying to flop off, I got some acrylic paint and I thought, well, it's molded in grey, so I'll just paint the green on there. So I painted the green camouflage on there. And then I got the stickers. And while the wing was still trying to flop off and the paint was still kind of coming off on my fingers, I was putting the transfers on, the decals on or whatever. Then I stuck it underneath the thing, took a photograph, emailed it to them, and then the phone goes, absolutely perfect. So I deliberately set out to build a bad-looking model because they needed something to say, this is what a model looks. This is what your model should be looking like. Now, anyway,
you do realize you haven't actually proven me wrong. That's.
I set out to build.
I'm actually furious that you've come up with that story to.
I set out to build
what I was trying to say.
I set out to build a bad model. So when you say people don't deliberately set out to build bad models, that was the brief. Can we have a photograph of a bad model? Anyway, long story short,
driven by a publisher who would. I mean, I've.
Do you want to go into the workshop? Get it? No,
I know.
It's actually the workshop. Next time we're live for the workshop, I'll show you. But right, to get
I have a feeling you've told me this story before, so it's not. Yeah.
The punchline to this was about a couple of years ago, I got told off by somebody who said, well, actually, I think it's quite wrong that you're kind of humiliating somebody by saying this is how terrible their model is, and and kind of like and I built it. It's my model.
That's awesome.
And they went, oh. I said, yeah, that, and I told them the story, and they went, well, I still think it's wrong. You shouldn't be kind of putting people off by, and I thought, no, you're kind of like missing the point of why I did it, But yeah, it was just like, how dare you humiliate another modeler by poking fun at their skills? And it's like, I built that model.
Honestly,
anyway,
that's just honestly.
Yeah. Well, anyway.
Right. Ding ding.
I forgave Drew anyway. So
oh, did you?
No,
I still haven't got a copy. I still haven't got a copy of your book anyway. So
somebody out there's making a lot of money out of it because I think they're second hand now. They're about 150 quid or something.
Really?
Obviously half the price if I've signed them. So So anyway, yeah, exactly. Ding. Any other business?
None. How are Liverpool getting on?
None at all. None at all. No. Any other business? Well, my other business is I need to get on with that. So
yes, get on with it.
Get on with it. Absolutely. Thanks for that. Right. Okay.
I'm here to support you. I feel that's my role in life, is to support you. So stop moaning about it and get on with it.
I'm here to support you as well. And especially I'm here to support your biscuits. So best looking Lancaster variant, trust me. So on that note, we will be back on Sunday. We will actually on Sunday. We probably will go through quite a few of the little Micromere. I say little, some of the Micromere releases because we have rather neglected them, and they do have some very interesting releases coming out as well. So we're going to be playing catch up because people are going to say, "Well, they announced that back in December." Yeah, we know, but we're going to play catch up because they are doing some quite interesting stuff, and this is the Interesting Modeling Company, so we are trying to fulfill that.
I'm still trying to get over that little tiny helicopter bug thing that we looked at on Sunday. That's great, isn't it?
Oh, yes.
That little golden, it's like a golden egg with rotors. That's amazing.
It is indeed a little golden egg with rotors.
Look at that. The little Bendix helicopter.
Isn't that fantastic?
I genuinely would like to build one of those. It's amazing.
Yep, it's on my list now. So, right, on that note, we will see you Sunday. So, as always, stay safe, stay out of trouble, and it's good night from me.
And it's good night from him.
So, good night, and see you Sunday.